Hello, everybody, and welcome again. Welcome, welcome, welcome. It's great to have you with us. Matt Solomon here with Mike Salata and Rick Solomon. Guys, welcome. Good to have you with us again. And today we're going to be jumping into a really important topic. And we're going to be talking about how to overcome stress in your firm, even if it feels inevitable, even if it's all you know, even if stress is what has been your norm for a long time. So it's a really important topic, and we'll dive into why. But chances are, if you're an accountant, which you are if you're watching this video, you feel stress. You feel stress in the work that you're doing. You feel stress, deadline to deadline pressure, dealing with sometimes really high volume and low profit stuff, dealing with clients that may be undervalue, underappreciate you, and don't get work done on time. So chances are you're not unfamiliar with the topic. And so today what we're going to do is dive into it. We're going to explore it. We're going to take it apart. And then we're going to give you some really wonderful, practical, and easy solutions to be able to move through this, because the reality is it's costing us a lot, and we'll talk about that. So, Rick, I'm going to turn it over to you first. Thanks for being with us today again. Appreciate you taking some time. And I want to get your take on it. Just talk to me about how you see stress showing up in firms and what you've experienced. If you have any personal stories as when you ran your firm, and just kind of share. I'm sure you do. If you just share some of those stories and what your understanding and experience has been dealing with stress in the firm.
Yeah, well, this is a subject near and dear to my heart, and there's a lot of reasons for that. But what we see in the profession, and I see a lot of it. I coached accountants, talked to accountants. I've been in practice. There's a lot of stress, and we sort of come to accept it as, hey, it comes with the territory. It really doesn't have to. My own experience of stress, my first year of practice, I was very successful with marketing and selling and brought a lot of great clients in. In fact, I got 74 business clients in 1 year, which is a story I love to tell. The story I don't love to tell is it was incredibly stressful because I had a huge amount of work to do and I didn't have systems and processes in place and all that. But the reality of what we see every day, if you think about the nature of the accounting profession, and I know everybody watching this who's practicing knows this all too well, you're dealing with a never-ending series of deadlines. There's just so many deadlines for different types of taxes and other filings. You're dealing with, how do I build my practice? How do I get new clients? How do I get the right clients? And then you get a new client, and then there's all this work to do. And then you get, we'll call them the pain in the butt clients that, the information's late and it's not clear and they don't respond and you're chasing them. And then there's the stress of, the billing and collecting and am I making enough money? So you have all these different pieces that together add up to a practice where, and unfortunately we see a lot of this, it almost feels like at a certain point, you start out building your practice and you're excited and you're energetic, but it almost gets to this point where instead of you running the practice, it starts to run you. It starts to take on a life of its own. And usually it's not pretty. And so we say, okay, well, I'm making a living. Hopefully, not everybody is, but some people are making a really good living. But even accountants I talk to that are doing really well, they're stressed. And what people don't understand, if you're not in the profession, it's not just the things I mentioned. It's the nature of our work. We don't get a pass for inaccuracies. People say, oh, I worked all these hours tax season. Yeah, people sometimes work insane tax season hours. Some people are working insane hours year round. But the nature of the work, you're not allowed to make errors. You can't say to a client, hey, I got 90% of the tax return right. What do you want from me? 10% errors. That's a good rate, right? It's all got to be right. It takes a tremendous amount of focus and attention. And so we get into this, like I said, life of its own practice where you're just constantly pulled in a lot of directions. And one more thing I want to add, and I don't want to get Mike's take on this because I know he talks to accountants every day. Another whole area of stress for most people running a firm is delegation and people. Hiring people, getting the right people, getting good people, and then making sure they're doing the right thing. And your butt's on the line for the quality of the work that goes out the door. So you've got to review it or make sure it's done right. And then how much time and energy do you invest in your staff? And then when you do that and you get somebody who's really good and then they leave. So there's this constant barrage of situations and challenges and difficulties. And very often it's referred to, we hear this a lot, putting out fires, but it's just this ongoing list of things that constantly keep you trying to hold it together and pull it together. And to me, the definition of stress is wanting things to be different than they are. There's a reality of what is, but it ain't what you want. You want something different. You want, life to be a different way, practice to be a different way, and you're constantly trying to make it that way, but in the moment, it's not what you want, and that equals stress. So with that, Mike, I would love to hear your perspective on this. I know you've got a lot to say.
I love that you call it a constant barrage, because I think that's spot on. Constant barrage, continuing that theme. It's the clients that you're dealing with. Most of the work you're doing is perceived as a necessary evil. People aren't coming in excited for that work. People aren't excited to turn in their financials to get that work done either. So, of course, like you said, Rick, they're lagging. They're taking their time. They're not excited about possibly having a penalty or making a payment. And they're not showing up with a smile on their face. They're usually a little frowned upon, as they come in the door. A gray cloud is following them, and that just kind of shifts into your energy as well. And then you think about, how do I grow? Well, I grow by having more of these clients and more of this type of work, which is a stress in itself, because now I need more to make more, and it's more of this, right? More of this that's not so great, that's not the funnest to be dealing with. And it's just a tug, and you bring that home with you, because often you're not even done when you leave the office. You're bringing that home with you. And if you're not actually doing the work, you're thinking about it. And then am I actually being at home to have dinner with my family? Am I able to actually take a vacation? Or everyone's nagging you because you're not there when you're there. Your head's, somewhere else in the clouds, or you're on your laptop. You're checking your email. You're doing all these different things that are preventing you from really having that quality time that you want. So you're getting stress from all places. And it's just, again, like you said, Rick, a constant barrage of different things, timelines, deadlines, more bad news, more things to fix that aren't always fun, nor that people want to pay you for it.
Yeah. And Mike, I'm sorry, Mike, were you done?
No, it's just funny, the other part is it starts to feel like there's just no choice in the matter. This is just what I have to do, which makes it even more stressful. And it's funny when you think about that, often that's the attitude we bring into our relationships with clients. We become an employee, even though we're being paid for a service, we own our own firms, and we become an employee. And it's the stress of making that person happy, being all things to all people, right? Being able to show up and do our best job, but for 100, 200 clients sometimes, right before a deadline. So, yes, just not fun.
Mike, I appreciate you guys sharing that and really painting the picture for a couple reasons. Number one is that everybody watching this can realize that what they're experiencing, they're not alone in it. And I think it's really important to look at that and to acknowledge that that's what's going on for a majority of the profession right now. And just a quick question for anybody watching this. If you do agree, if you have experienced these things that Mike or Rick are talking about, put it in the chat box and just I would love to hear what you have to say. We'll check it out. I'll respond to that stuff in the next few days. But I just definitely want to hear in the comments and in the chat what your experience of stress and how it's showing up for you. I think there's another element of this, and obviously stress can show up in a lot of ways, but there's something that I think nobody in the profession is really talking about. It's sort of a very taboo component of this. And it's the damage that this kind of stressful work, whether it's deadlines or clients or volume or not being able to put it down, the reality is that there's a damage that this does for the body and the mind. And so I've actually, unfortunately, met a lot of accountants at conferences over the years, and I've seen a lot of them who look so worn out and so beat down, and who seem to have some issues because of the stress that they're dealing with. And obviously, I don't know that it's directly related to that, but in a lot of cases, as I've spoken to them, sure enough, it is. And so what you see, obviously, and this is not a science lesson, of course, but when you're not dealing with the stress, you're wreaking havoc on your adrenal glands. And if you want to learn more about them, take some time and do some research. You wreak havoc on your body system, your nervous system, and you can even, and unfortunately, there's a lot of people that I've spoken to who have ended up passing away because of the havoc that it's wreaked on their hearts. And so this type of living in a stressful job and environment, it's one thing to get used to it. And I know accountants are such hard workers, and it's a beautiful thing to just do what you have to do. But the other side of that is there's a risk. There's a real measurable health risk to not taking care of yourself. And we all know that, right? We all know you got to eat well and you have a low stress lifestyle and all these things and move your body. And we get that. But the reality is that if you're not actually doing that, and if you're accepting that, over time, over decades, this lifestyle and this practice that you're in, it wreaks havoc on you. And so, it's kind of as I share this with you guys, it's kind of a call to be very conscious about what you're choosing every day, even if you don't feel like you have a choice. And so I want to kind of dive back into the conversation with you guys and just talk to me about some of the other things that you're seeing and how you're seeing stress show up in terms of the business model and what we look at as really high profit and low volume work sometimes, or I'm sorry, high volume and low profit work. You guys have a perspective on that?
Yeah, I'll jump in. It's funny, again, not just the profits, but it's the emotional equity we're losing from our team members, even ourselves at times. It's like, do I want to be here? Do I want to show up? It's like that cringe when it's like the alarm clock goes off and it's, do I really want to get out of bed and get in the car and go deal with that now? For many of us, we just got done dealing with it 4 hours prior. So it's led into the night, now it's going up. And then our team members are seeing this. And it's like, how do we lead a great culture when we're dragging ourselves through the door to come in and do that? We're not showing up with high energy. And I love what you said, Matt, because it's a drain, not just on our energy, but on our psyche and everything that we do. And then it parlays into we don't have the time or energy to develop our team members or train them or spend the time to mentor them in the way that they need to. And it's not just the team members, it's our clients. We don't have the time to really sit down and really advise them to the ability and potential that we can, to really spend the time and create the space to really impact the results that they really need and really want from us. And again, because we're not doing that, you're seeing this huge just kind of drain and gray cloud over a lot of the firms out there. Rick, I'm curious how you feel about that or what you've seen.
Well, it's really interesting. I had a conversation with the managing partner of a firm a week ago, probably a $4.5 million firm. And he was describing his life to me. And this guy was clearly a rainmaker and clearly making things happen in 10 different places at once and doing amazing things. And then he was wondering, and this is why he was talking to me, why aren't the rest of my people stepping up? I'm looking for future partners. I'm looking for people to take on the burden, take on the role and, help own the firm. I said, well, I don't know for sure because I haven't spoken with them, but here's my guess. They're looking at you and the life you live and how you devote yourself to business 24/7. Maybe they don't want that life. Maybe they see the stress. And this guy was successful. He was making a ton of money. The firm was doing well. He was stressed. You could feel it. You could just really feel it. And then he convinced himself, as so many of us do when it comes to stress, well, it's just the way it is and it's okay. And I wouldn't get where I am. And look, I'm not against success. I'm not against making great money. I think those are beautiful things. But at what cost? At what cost? And that's the thing we have to start thinking about. And I think the thing that keeps I don't think accountants are surprised to hear that we know as a profession that we're stressed and we'd love to do something different. You know what I think the real issue is? People don't know what else is possible. We're living the practice that we've been taught, that we learned, that everybody else is living. So here we are thinking, we're doing what we're supposed to be doing. And then there's a lot of stress in it and you don't see any other options, which in and of itself adds more stress. Like stress sometimes could be mitigated by the fact that there is light at the end of the tunnel. But when you look down the tunnel and that light you're seeing is an oncoming train, that's sort of like, where's this going to go? So I'm going to grow and get more clients and hire more people. And we have this underlying hope that someday it's going to get better. But some very wise business person I heard recently say, hope is actually not a strategy, which I agree with. So I think the real question is, what do we do about it? What's the solution? I think that's really what we need to be thinking about.
Yeah, and I love that, and I want to get into that. And I think it's just amazing what comes up. And unfortunately, because of the nature of this work and how slowly over time we take on one more client and we do what we think we're supposed to do and we do what everybody in our networking groups is doing and all that stuff. Slowly over time, you don't realize it. But all of a sudden, where you are now, you can open your eyes and look around and be like, you know what? This is not necessarily the most enjoyable work. And this is not necessarily the work that's most lucrative. And I'm not serving the clients, like Mike was saying, the way I want to, because I'm serving 300 clients right now instead of the ones that I really can give my value to on another level. And so what's amazing, and Rick, I want to dive into this with you, but you talk about a term a lot called the default practice. and this is really, guys, we're going to get into the solution now, but in terms of dealing with stress, and Rick, I want you to talk a little bit about the default practice, and then I want to help you give everybody who's watching a solution in terms of how to reduce the stress and what that's going to look like for them. So,
yeah. Well, earlier I used the phrase, the practice that happens to you. You do this, you do that, all of a sudden the practice starts to take on its own life. That's the default practice. It was the practice I had for sure. And so on the one hand, I was really happy because I was making money and it was growing and a lot of good things were happening. And I was stressed and, all over the place. Happy at the same time. It wasn't like my life was miserable. My life was good in a lot of ways, but constantly stressed. And that's kind of how it wears you down. So that's the default practice. The other end of that is what I would call an intentional practice, which is a practice on your terms. And so when I speak to accountants, which I do fairly often, who want to do things differently, like they're doing okay, but they know something much better is possible, or they're not doing so okay, whatever the situation is. But so I always ask a very simple question. In an ideal world, what would you love to do every day? And I'll tell you what, the answer that comes up is pretty common and consistent. And it all boils down to one thing. What I hear most accountants say, what I'd really love is to maybe work with fewer clients and do more for them and make a lot more money and get rid of the pain in the butt clients and not be all over the place and not have an insane tax season that I do because I need the money. So I bring in another 50, 100, 300, whatever it is, 1,000 a year. But if I didn't have to do all that, if I could work with a smaller number of clients and do work that's really rewarding and get rid of the rest, that would make life really sweet. And so I call that more, if the first practice that happens to you is the default practice, this is the intentional practice. It's saying, what life do I really want, and moving that direction. And the first thing, and what I really want to share with all of you, is that it's really possible to do that. But you have to stop and ask yourself, am I willing, am I open to exploring that possibility? That's my take on it, Matt. It's a great question. It's the right question. What can I do about it?
Yeah, and absolutely. And so I think it's important that we stop and we look at it. And one thing that's really interesting, when we have these initial conversations with accountants before they become clients, sometimes I notice that there's you almost have to push them to get them to that answer. For some people, it pops out really easy. It's like, oh, I'd love to work less and blah, blah. But then there's the people who are like, yeah, that sounds cool, but that sounds like a crazy dream. The reality is I got a lot of clients. I have relationships with them. I don't want to hurt my, the integrity of my company and get rid of people. And I don't want to, do this. And yeah, it would be wonderful to work with a couple clients, but it just doesn't seem real to people. And I'd love to hear from either one of you. What, if you have anything to say to that, and for the people who it sounds like a wonderful thing, of course, that'd be perfect. But then there's the reality, quote unquote, reality of what I actually have to deal with. Do you guys have a perspective on reality for a minute that you can just kind of share to encourage? And I want you to share it from a place of, you don't have to tell examples, but from what you've seen, not a theory, but what you know to be true.
Well, I'll just jump in because I was thinking about this when Rick was talking, and I mentioned it earlier. So many of those people that have a hard time answering that question, Matt, they lost the idea of choice. They feel they have no choice in the matter anymore. And I see that so often, more times than not, quite honestly. It's like, there's no other way, Mike. I've done this, and I've been doing this for a long time, and since the 90s, and I've heard that answer. There's no other way. And so depressing, to be honest with you, and it's because that's the answer. There's no other way. This is how it's always been done, right? They just don't know that there's a different way, that there's a choice in the matter. And I like how Rick framed it in the form of the practice that happened to you, because that's what happens. When you feel there is no choice, you're left with what happens to you. You're left with what walks through the door. You're left with the services that you only know to be able to sell. So I see that all the time, and it's just this barren desert of there's nothing else possible. This is all I'm left with. And who am I to complain because I'm making money doing it?
Yeah, you know what kind of feels like to me, Mike? It's like, so there's the hamster on the wheel, and they're running their butt off. And we know they're not really going anywhere, but the wheel's turning. And you say, hey, buddy, you don't have to keep running. Like, you're not really going anywhere. You can just step off the wheel. Things will get easier. You catch your breath. Yeah, I know. But, making some good progress. And we become blinded We do. We go through life. You talk about reality. You know, each of us has our own reality. We kind of go through life with blinders. We see what we see. But here's a very simple test for what's really real. If that were the reality, that's the way a practice had to be, then 100% of practitioners would have that kind of practice because there's no other possibilities. That's not the case. There are some practice owners out there, and we know this because we see and get to work with a lot of them, that are living a really good life, making great money, and doing exactly what I said, which is fewer clients, much higher fees. They're really stepping into a role that's more valued by the client, and they're enjoying life. There are people, this one woman we work with, she takes 17 weeks vacation a year. That's real. That's not BS. 17 weeks. I mean, people, you can live your life and have a great practice, but you have to be willing to just step back and question it and just ask one question. What else is possible? And explore that possibility. See where it takes you. Nothing to lose. Is it really possible to get off this wheel? It is. But you have to be willing to explore what that looks like. That's my sense of it.
Yeah, I love that. That's so powerful. And I think, you know, what I've seen in the work that you guys have done is that, you know, ultimately the first step is really having this crack in that shield that says that this is all I have to do. This is all I know. This is all I can do. And what I've seen as we've done, and as I've watched you guys do so massively over the last couple of decades, really last 12 years in particular, is watching you guys crack that first layer of nothing else is possible. This is what I have to do. And then you guys showing examples of the stories of people that you've helped. And all of a sudden it's like, hey, wait a minute. You know what, maybe this is possible. And all of a sudden, and when I see that crack, and hopefully this video starts to crack some shells, but when you just start to realize that there is actually another possibility, and yes, you have to step back and look at that like you guys are saying, I think that's perfect. The other thing is huge in that is having the guidance to just go through that. And so, but I love to see that, yes, you just have to realize that it's possible. You don't need to know what it looks like. You don't have to know exactly what to do next, but you have to just step back and say, you know what, there's a lot of people out there who are making great money, serving clients at a level that feels more fulfilling for them, and that ultimately the clients value, like you were saying, Rick, and that the lifestyle becomes much more intentional and conscious. And so I love to, I love that that's the case. And so what I want to offer anybody that's listening, and Rick and Mike, I appreciate you guys so much. You're always bringing the heat on these conversations. I love the perspective. I love the learnings that you've had and the studies and the work that you put into this. But I want to offer anybody who wants some guidance and getting clear on what that possibility looks like. We're happy to chat with you. So Rick and I have opened up some time in the next few days only just to chat, just to connect. And what we want to do is we want to help you get breakthroughs. We want to help you start seeing different possibilities. We want to really understand what you're looking to accomplish in your firm and help you even gain clarity in that area too, and ultimately help you overcome any obstacles that might be in the way. So it's a free call. We just want to chat. It's usually 45 minutes to an hour. We'll dive deep with you. We'll get a really clear picture. And then our intention is, whether it's us or not, our intention is to point you in the direction of something that will serve you. So sometimes that is us. And quite honestly, sometimes it's not. And so, you know, we just want to make sure that we're serving you, very connected to the profession, and definitely know some good resources if we're not the answer. But I appreciate you guys for watching. I encourage you in the description of this video, there'll be a link to book a call with Rick or I. I encourage you to do it if you want just to see some possibilities and really start to put together a very clear plan on what you need to do next and how you can start to transform from doing work that's really stressful to doing work that's super fulfilling and really intentional around the lifestyle you want to have. So Rick, Mike, I appreciate you guys and looking forward. I've been enjoying doing these videos with you, and I look forward to just some more and more great stuff. And it's been wonderful to see the community reacting in the comments and also reaching out to us. So that's why we're continuing to do these, because we've just got some awesome responses, and it's just been fun, you know, being able to share this with so many people and have some of the best step forward and just say, I want to do this. I want my life to be better. So Rick, Mike, thank you guys. Thank you everybody for watching. And until next time, we'll see you. Take care, everybody.
All right, recording.